So you know it's not a crime to be fascinated by all things criminal. And if you do like delving into the underworld, why not join us for a special live show on March 27th at the Cork Opera House. We'll be talking about the making of a cartel and all the wild and crazy stories that happened along the way. So why not join us for this special live show? Tickets from corkpodcastfestival.ie.
So you shouldn't take pleasure in the downfall of somebody else, should you? But when you look at that photograph of Prince Andrew coming out of police custody, it's hard not to have a little warming of your heart, isn't it?
I know. If you didn't know the circumstances, you could say he had a really big night out for his birthday, because it was actually his birthday, wasn't it, that he was arrested on? But
but look, it's one of the great press photos of the last couple of years. Like there's sometimes an image, particularly a stilled image, just captures something, and the way he's slunken down, and you know, he obviously is a particularly slunken down sort of character anyway.
Yeah.
In what he's been accused of anyway, which he continues to deny.
The eyes. It kind of, do you remember there used to be some competition on caption this photo?
Yeah.
So this would be one, like his eyes look particularly...
Yeah. I mean, the people are ahead of you. Like there's already millions of memes, no doubt. But
yeah.
So obviously it's an incredible fall from grace, and he looks like he's fallen from grace. I don't know why they hide anyway. I mean, it's not as if there's no pictures of Prince Andrew, and if he missed the photographers, he wouldn't be pictured.
No.
But obviously it is, I suppose, arguably the biggest crime story of certainly in the UK of the century.
Yeah.
But you know, probably one of the biggest crime stories of all time, and to arrest. I know he's recently departed from being a prince, but to see somebody arrested like that, I mean, it is an incredible moment.
Yeah, and you're never really, like, obviously he's not officially part of the royal family, but you know, you're never fully, like, he's still living, you know, in the shadow of that, and obviously still is enjoying the perks of that in terms of, you know, he hasn't been...
Oh, but he's been downgraded. You can see his house that's being searched, and it looked like the most incredible home you'd ever see.
That's what I mean. Like, so, you know, it's not exactly like, you know, he's still very much, he'll never not be part of the royal family in terms of the public and the media perception of him. So, you know, it's
yeah, but he is, like, he just is. I mean, he's only resigned. He's only not an official royal because he got caught up to no good with Jeffrey Epstein. But, so to go back on what happened, of course, because most people have seen the picture and seen he's been arrested. But Prince Andrew had a long association with Jeffrey Epstein, the paedophile financier, a guy that has been certainly accused of sexually abusing hundreds of women, really, Epstein. Now, Prince Andrew had a long association with him. While before he was convicted, Jeffrey Epstein was ultimately convicted in the late 2000s of the offence of soliciting a minor, the very minor offence. Yeah. But despite his conviction, Prince Andrew stayed in contact with him the whole time. He has been accused, Andrew, directly by a number of Epstein's victims of, having basically sexually abusing them in effect. Something he's denied very publicly. But it's not because of his sex crimes that Prince Andrew is being arrested.
No.
He's been arrested really for leaking confidential information.
Yeah, it's called suspicion of misconduct in public office. So he was arrested for that, and he was questioned for 11 hours, and then he was released. Now, I have heard experts talking about it, saying that it's actually a really hard charge to prove. And that, like, you know, I think they're changing it, or they're replacing it with some other kind of legislation, but that's what he was arrested for, and they've continued to search his home today, so that's kind of kept it in the news, obviously, where he used to live. Yeah,
so basically what he's accused of, like, Prince Andrew was a useless old son of the Queen, really. I mean, not that any of the others are showing much signs of being particularly useful, but nonetheless, Prince Andrew was a particularly, you know, the Queen was actually meant to be very fond of him personally.
It was always said that he was her favourite son, wasn't it?
It was, but his role, I suppose, is because he's not so directly in line with the throne. He was given this job as a trade envoy, which is really a guy that's sent around with diplomatic missions to kind of drum up business for Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's accused of is that as part of these delegations, he hears information. Like in particular, there's a couple of trips, one to Hong Kong, I think one to Vietnam, and another interestingly to Afghanistan, where he's a trade envoy. The British state are over there. They're drumming up business for companies at home. He hears all of this information as part of his job. I mean, he was actually also in a recently written book. While he was as an aside, wasn't he meant to have had more than a dozen Thai women wheeled into him on one of these trade envoys to satisfy him? But so he was, and I mean, however, I don't know what he was doing as a trade envoy, because he's notoriously the most uncharming and unpersonable individual you could come across. But nonetheless, he obviously had access to this information. And in one occasion, he's accused in Afghanistan, in the Helmand province, which was one of the areas that the British and the Americans fought particularly hard for in Afghanistan. And obviously, after the Americans and the British forces were in there, they attempted to rebuild Afghanistan at times. And he was sending Jeffrey Epstein detailed information about some of the government contracts. I mean, you could say, as you said, it is difficult to prove because I think you have to show intent. But I mean, it's amazing. And it's amazing that he would just email that stuff to that man. This is post his conviction and everything.
Yeah, but it's kind of, but he always been sort of known to be, it's just a blatant arrogance,
it's also the shocking greed of Andrew and his wife. I mean, they seemed to be desperate for money. I don't know how they were desperate for money. I mean, they weren't desperate for money that they couldn't afford a bag of chips and a battered sausage, but they seem to have been desperate to grab money off people. Maybe it's, and Epstein obviously was bankrolling them effectively.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Well, yeah, he's up, yeah. It's kind of like the way now you have he was the front, really, wasn't he? He was the...
Well, I mean, it's very hard. It's very hard to know what was in it for everybody.
No, I know.
That is the great mystery of the Epstein thing. I mean, he was bankrolling Fergie and Andrew. He was obviously getting these little tips off. But I mean, is there something behind it? Is there an intelligence gathering? It's not fully clear.
Well, you can see like his intents now in the sense of, information is power, isn't it? So he had all this money and he was obtaining, it was all like investment opportunities. And I think there was one email that was sent 5 minutes after he got it from his advisor that Andrew sent it on to Epstein. So he was obviously using Andrew with the promise of money, which most people, you always think that people that they have, as you said, they wouldn't have wanted in terms of designer goods and lovely houses and stuff like that. But he obviously, that greed, sometimes when you have, the more money you have, the more you want. So he was obviously manipulating that and for information.
And look, the final thing I'll say about this is this stuff about Epstein that's not to do with the sex trafficking and that has brought down Peter Mandelson, for example. It never would have come out. It's only a very small chance that this did come out due to a sort of internal struggle between the Republicans and the Democrats. God only knows what goes on in the real world at that level.
Yeah.
And this is a rare occasion when we have found it out, but there must be so much more that we don't know.
Of course, and all the names that have been brought into it, and it's just very seedy, isn't it? It's a little bit
well. Exactly.
And you just think of them all on their private planes and...
Okay, so that's exactly where we're going to end it, right? Because we're talking about private planes and, billionaires and financiers. And on the day we had that story up about Prince Andrew, we also had somebody at the absolute very other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It was a woman called Tina McDonough who was convicted of, I suppose you'd have to describe it as, there really is the smallest level of criminality. But not to say now that...
No, I suppose, to put it in the context, of course, this is a total other side of it. This is addiction, and this is, someone that's obviously is... possibly doesn't have a lot in life. But basically Tina McDonough was before the courts in Monaghan. She stole €88 worth of goods from SuperValu in Clones and Monaghan in 2022. And this included Jack Daniels, some yogurt, some washing tablets. It was basically even her, the prosecution barrister said it wasn't exactly the necessities of the starving, but as her defence said, she was, struggling with addiction at the time, and maybe people wouldn't have sympathy for that. But I suppose if you compare her starting life to Andrew's starting life, you can maybe try and see the sort of the human side of it there. But she was, I suppose the reason that this story sort of hit headlines is, the judge's comments. Obviously, Judge John Aylmer, who was sitting there in that court, he said, this is your last chance, your final chance to clean your act up. It's because it was heard that she has 66 previous convictions, many of which are for shoplifting. It was said in court. So she's 35-year-old woman, and it was said in court that she has a 4-month-old grandson that she's trying to change her life for. She is a mother of 3 as well. So I suppose she is trying to get help, and she, her defence was saying she recognises the error of her ways.
Now, I mean, one of the reasons, obviously, that it did become, people really paid attention to it, because, of course, she is described, the court hears how she's a grandmother.
Yeah.
She's 35.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to say it more like, I was trying not to be as blatant about it there.
No, but that's what it is. Like,
yeah.
Of course, she's quite, like, she's sort of a baby face looking within reason for 35. So, I mean,
she is.
It is incredible. Actually, I think Linford Christie, the sprinter, you're an athletics fan, I think he won a medal at the Olympics when he was 36, and he was a grandfather.
I heard you say that. That's very, very young, 36.
Yeah.
Really young.
So, I mean, now, if you look at that sentence, right, what she was basically given, was it a 1-year sentence, suspended for a period of 3 years? Yeah,
so he was kind of saying, like, your last chance, you'll go to jail. She has done spells in jail now, and then she's done, a lot of community service as well. But yeah, she was given a suspended sentence.
Yeah.
Which means she won't go to jail unless she obviously reoffends within the time period.
Yeah, and of course the courts tend to be, they can impose them pretty much automatically.
Yeah. But it's a difficult one to know how to answer though as well. Like, this is a wider question now, but because obviously it did say that she has addiction issues, so she's going into prison. Is that going to, is she better to try and stay out? She has access to her grandchild. Maybe that is the way for her to turn her life around.
Exactly. And hopefully it is a chance that she takes. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just ironic when you talk about Prince Andrew. Like, at the end of the day, we all know he's not going to get a suspended sentence, and he's not going to go to prison. I mean, let's be realistic about it. And it's just funny when you see, like, people are very cynical about the justice systems, because, Miss McDonough, what was it? She stole yogurts and a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah, exactly.
In the context of Prince Andrew, you'd be hard-hearted to think that they should lock her up. But even when they do lock people up, it doesn't always run smooth, does it? Because
this is a good segue, actually.
Yeah, because Ken Foy, our colleague who's on this podcast regularly, he had a great story about somebody who escaped from prison and then basically rang up and said, can I come back in? I'm really sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I suppose he basically walked out of, and this wouldn't be the first time now for someone to probably walk out of an open prison, but his name is Stephen Daly, and he was in Loughlin House in Cavan. And he, now saying that, like, we call him a burglar, but his convictions are quite serious. He's a few home invasion convictions were quite terrifying for the victims, I'm sure. But essentially, he basically decided that he'd had enough, and he's from Drogheda originally, and he just walked out, but he didn't last very long. Apparently, he had nowhere to go, according to sources that told Ken. So 6 hours later, he called the prison and asked them to come and get him.
Yeah.
And now he's paying for it because he's been sent back to Cork prison, which is obviously more secure prison, and I don't think that'll be happening for him for a while.
No, he's subject to disciplinary sanction, I think, in Cork prison.
Yeah.
Like, it's the open prisons, I think, people find them fascinating because, it seems such a contradictory concept. But Loughlin House he was in, which is up in Cavan, and it's in a pretty isolated part of the country. And, really, just like Shelton Abbey as well, they're effectively in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Now, you can walk in and walk out of that prison, no problem. I presume there's CCTV that'll record you coming in and out. And there may even well be security on the doors, but there's not this constant check. The gates aren't locked in Shelton Abbey. I think you can just drive in.
Yeah.
So, and the majority of, well, maybe not the majority, but a good number of those people are coming in and out every day. So it's an escape, but it's really a walk out the door,
But surely they, like this, we've had a few stories similar to this in recent times. Like surely they know that that's a risk there, but I guess the whole point is, you're getting nearing the end of your sentence, so you have to be able to trust them.
Yeah, well, I mean, these people are at the end of their sentence, and they don't get there. Like they don't put, criminals that are, that they believe are going to
be dangerous
in there, and they certainly don't put them in there if they, people are going there for the last 6 months of their sentence to try and. Stephen Daly was in for quite a lengthy sentence, was it? It was.
Yeah, it was an aggravated burglary that he's pleaded guilty to a couple of. It was a 6-year sentence, I think.
Yeah, so he's coming to the end, presumably.
Yeah,
and he'll get. They try and let him have a bit of responsibility because obviously people become institutionalized, and they need to be able to take a degree of responsibility for themselves in order to cope.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's people don't know how easy it is to escape from prison, I suppose.
No, yeah.
Now, one of the other stories that there was a lot of interest this week was James Mago Gatley. While Gerard Hutch was the subject of a play, I suppose, and the ambassador that we've spoken about is one of his associates, and I suppose his nephew Gary Hutch's best friend, James Mago Gatley, was having another sort of hearing, I suppose, in a long-running case with involving the Criminal Assets Bureau. Yeah,
so basically James Mago Gatley's home on Glen Drive in Coolock, it was surrendered to CAB. Essentially, it was declared the proceeds of crime, and that went on for a while. They tried to fight that. His partner, they said they're no longer together, but his then partner, Charlene Lamb, she had said that she used some of her like legitimate income to pay for the mortgage. So I think she was due to get some back. But basically it was given over to CAB. But in the intervening period, he told courts last year that himself and Charlene had split up and that he was living in the house on his own. And basically he took some of the fittings out. So when CAB went...
stairs out.
Well, I was getting to that, Niall. So I was trying to say that when the guards went in, they had to use ladders to get to the second level because he took the stairs out and he took some other fixtures and fittings. So obviously this became a thing and CAB went back to court and they basically said that he should be in contempt of court and possibly go to jail for doing this. And that didn't happen, but it's still wrangling on in the sense of the latest reported by Eamon Dillon, who was in court this week, was that they can't decide on the value of the damage that was done because obviously that's going to be taken off. Mago, I assume, have to pay that, so they can't decide. Obviously CAB they had an expert that was trying to value it, and then it's going to, I think it was put back because Mago's legal team are going to assess it themselves, or they're going to put in what their assessor says the damage was worth, and then that will be taken. Obviously, I assume that will have to be stumped up by Mago.
Yeah, the CAB cases they really grind these guys down, I think, don't they? They really are quite relentless once they get them into the system.
Yeah.
Now, Seamus Culleton, who myself and Nicola spoke about this week, I mean, it just keeps getting worse for him, does it, on a public level?
I know. It's like the world's worst hangover or something. It's like, when you do something and then the actions just keep on reverberating. So I say he probably, in one sense, I was actually thinking about this and I was thinking maybe he was just in such a mental state of distress because of the conditions don't sound great, that he probably didn't fully think about the consequences, but that's just my own opinion. But yeah, essentially things have, obviously it first emerged last week. We reported that there were outstanding drug charges and a bench warrant had been issued by a court in Wexford. Then obviously there was a story reported, an interview with his twin daughters who said that he should come home and that they haven't seen him ever. And then the latest now is basically there was court documents filed in the US where he had, and nobody knew this to my knowledge, that he obviously has an American wife now. now who has issued a plea for him to get out of detention, but it's emerged through court documents that were filed previously in the US that he was actually married before. I think it was in 2017, and she filed a protection. They're now divorced, but she had filed for a protection order against him, basically citing safety concerns.
Yes. Now, of course, Seamus Culleton he remains in an ICE detention centre in Texas, in El Paso, and the clock is ticking really for him. He's been given a sort of a stay. A deportation order was served on him. That's been given a stay for a number of days while he gets to appeal it. But of course, we know, and everybody probably knows at this stage, that the US have deported a huge amount of people, and the courts, I don't know if they do have to appear before a full court hearing. They have sort of these sort of district court. It's not actually a district court, but they haven't stopped a lot. And most of the people coming before the courts have been deported, and he is therefore likely to come home soon. Now it is I read a piece, I think it was in the Star, saying people are taking it's wrong that people are taking, I suppose, a bit of glee from Mr. Culleton's woes, and that he's the victim of a tyrannical regime.
Yeah, but he's also, like, I read another opinion piece, I think it was in the Indo, and it was basically saying, he's a victim, like, he took the risk and now he's paying the price for taking the risk. So you kind of have to take responsibility for that yourself. And I think the reason that was another question that I think was raised this week, and it probably is a fair question, because like, deportations did happen in other presidential reigns, but obviously now, because of as you said, the state of play in the US and the division, and obviously Trump and ICE and everything like that, it's really centre of media attention at the moment. But like, there were people deported under Biden and under other presidents as well, so that has to be taken into account. And I did have a lot of sympathy at the start, because obviously, like, they're minor drug charges. He wasn't convicted of them. He's in a detention centre since September. He had a good job. He was married. He was trying to make a life for himself. But like, since then, like, the interview with his daughters, like, in fairness, they've never met their father. And then obviously the latest about the protection order. And you kind of do think, yeah, it is a tyrannical state at the moment over there. But at the same time, even if Trump wasn't in power, like, you can't, like, how many issues of people going over there not having a green card and not getting back into the country, like, it's happening for decades, or longer than decades. And you kind of have to suck it up, I think, as well, if you get caught. Like, he knew obviously what he was doing wasn't legal.
Yeah.
So, and he's not been the first Irish person to be caught. So,
no. No, he took I think it says in that Indo, he took a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
But it's rolled incredibly wrong. Yeah. And the other thing you realise, and we circle all the way back to Prince Andrew, like the American system is different, right? In Ireland, those divorce papers would not be accessible.
No.
If somebody gets divorced in Ireland, you can't report it, and you can't even access it. And that's also true, obviously, if Prince Andrew, if Jeffrey Epstein was Irish and Prince Andrew had been emailing him, we'd never know, because the Irish government, the Dáil, would never vote for anything to be publicly put out there.
No.
And people, of course, worry about privacy.
Your shame is your own in Ireland.
Totally. I mean, like, if you ever send an FOI into the Irish government, and you'll know how hard it is to get even the most moderate of things, let alone release.
No, I agree with
emails.
you. Even with the guards and everything, it's I do totally agree with you.
So look, it's still hard on Mr. Culleton, and but he's going to be coming. I would say we'll see him back in the next few days. Yeah,
it is hard on him, but there is lots of stories like this, and it was actually a story you found that we're publishing today on another Irish man. He was in a long-term relationship with a American citizen, and they bought this, and he seemed to kind of been funding it because he had a really good job. So they bought this really nice house. I think it was worth $4 million in America.
Yeah, in New York.
In New York, yeah.
Fancy sort of apartments.
Yeah.
Rebecca,
Exactly, yeah, in a really, really swanky neighbourhood. And they were together for like 20 years, but essentially they started to have issues and decided to break up, and he thought they'd come to an agreement, but basically your man called ice on him and said this guy is illegal. And he was detained for 10 days and then self-deported. And the reason it's come up now is because he's suing him, basically saying that I bankrolled that property, which he's saying is his. So, you know, but he had to just leave, and he's back in Ireland now, and he was in America for 20 years. So it has been happening, you know, a lot behind the headlines, obviously.
It has.
You know, so...
Well, it'll be a media circus if he does land in Ireland, and not that we are adverse to media circuses.
No, that's kind of that's how we have our own homes, I'd say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Eimear.
Thanks, Niall.
If you're a crimeworld.com subscriber, you've probably already binged on our latest exclusive podcast series, The Regency 10 Years On, from the hit that changed gangland forever. This 6-part anniversary special revisits that fateful day when David Byrne was shot dead at the Northside Hotel, igniting a bloody feud between the Kinahan and Hutch gangs, one of the deadliest rivalries in Irish history. Here's a taste of the new series, exclusive to crimeworld.com subscribers. So that Friday was one of those really quiet days. I mean, we all knew that Daniel Kinahan was in Dublin for the Clash of the Clans boxing weigh-in. At least we knew he was due into Dublin the next day. That Clash of the Clans bout match had been heavily advertised. But the day itself there was just little going on.
So there was very little happening that day. It's February. It's kind of a quiet enough time for news in general. And Alan Cherry and Ernie Leslie were on the road. They were at another story actually in Finglas.
What was that, do you remember?
Well, it was one of these classic sort of district court stories where a guy I think some teenagers had thrown stones at his car and he got out and slapped the teenager. Always great kind of human stories because some people feel sorry for the teenagers and some people don't. And so Alan had been out there. But the guy had moved on. He'd called out to his house to see if he wanted to talk. He'd moved on. He wasn't there. And we discussed going to the Regency earlier. And I said, look, just go along and see what happens. You know, divert there. You know, we obviously weren't expecting anything. And obviously that point of Alan being there would be the subject of conspiracy, but we'll get into that at a later point.
For sure. So it was a case really that day of, you know, one thing hadn't worked out, so go to the next. But also there was definitely a general sense of if we could be there, just in case.
Yes, and as you said, you know, to see who was standing beside the Kinahans and who wasn't from that bigger organised crime group. So Alan and Ernie went out. I got a call. I think you got a call almost simultaneously, but I got a call from Alan. I'd spoken to him earlier on the day saying, yeah, you know, see what happens. And he phoned me up and said, there's after being a shooting and I think we've got a picture. And I actually went, yeah, very funny. But of course, you know, he stopped me and said, no, I'm serious. We're after, there's some guys come out with a gun, there's shots fired, and there's total and utter chaos. And, you know, our first thought is, you know, get yourself safe. I have to admit, my second thought was, I hope they did get good pictures. But, you know, you're still thinking they have to get safe. I mean, I know you probably got a similar call because Ernie and Alan obviously were in the same Jeep.
And of course, Ernie's the guy taking the photographs,
yes.
You know, so he's on the phone to me. So I actually had gone for a pizza for lunch and I had come back over to the office and the phone rings and it was Ernie. And I answered and he was panicked on the other end of the phone. Like, I mean, this was real high octane stuff. And he's still trying to take photos. He's trying to tell me what's happened. He's told me he thinks he's got a good one of one of the shooters as they were running from the scene. He was trying to call up the photograph on the back of his camera.
Yeah.
Because it would have taken him a while to get it onto a screen, but he'd also sent it into the office.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he was kind of in the middle of doing a number of things. And as I was on the phone to him from memory, the photograph came into the office and we put it up on the big screen. And it was clear to see that this wasn't just one of the shooters as he suspected, but it was two. One of them was dressed as a woman.
Which is, of course, it is. There was also this confusing story about guards coming in with weapons and obviously we know now that they weren't ERU guys, they were guys dressed as them. But Alan was telling me this, there was talk of these guards, and then obviously there was, the crowd fleeing from the scene. So it was all confusing. But as you said, Ernie had taken a picture of the back of his camera. People will know what the photographer's cameras look like, and they have a little digital screen. So you don't see it in great detail. But we knew this is a once-in-a-lifetime photograph has been gotten.
Yeah, as soon as it came in. And of course, look, the newsrooms aren't as busy as they used to be. They used to be very busy, buzzy places with phones ringing everywhere. And it felt like a proper newsroom that day. I remember everybody's phone was going. People were hearing little bits about it. The news was starting to break about it. And of course, we were there sitting in the office with this photo. There's that sort of news sense in you that you want to run this.
Yeah.
And at the time, we weren't putting stuff up online. This would have been held for the paper on the Sunday, and this is a Friday afternoon. We had something really special here. But we also, I think, knew the guards were going to be desperate for that picture because they were two gunmen running from a scene of a crime. So it was a very compromised situation, and there was a bit of arguments going on, and there was voices were raised.
Totally. I mean, because it is complex. I mean, normally the journalism likes to keep itself separate from the Gardaí investigations. So Garda investigations go on and journalism reports on them. But obviously then you're put in this compromising position because you have guys running out visibly with handguns in their hands. And, they're obviously then disappeared into the ether. And you have to have a discussion about what is your civic responsibility in terms of, do you help the guards? You don't want these armed gunmen to run down the street and kill another few people. So it was a complex one, and people were aware straight away that the guards are going to want these pictures and want to use it for their purposes. And we also have our purposes, which is to tell what happened and to report on the news. So there was a conflict straight away.
From my memory, as the afternoon went on and I was talking to contacts and to other people who were involved in crime journalism, etc., it became apparent that there were no guards at the weigh-in. That in actual fact, the guards didn't seem to be there at all. They were called literally by the hotel and had arrived in response to what had already gone on. Of course, David Byrne had been shot dead in the reception of the hotel. We were getting photographs in later in the day, which showed a very shocked-looking Liam Byrne standing outside the hotel, his hands in his pockets, standing beside his cousin Liam Rowe, another significant cartel member. There was no sign of Daniel Kinahan. I was getting calls from people who were telling me that these professional killers had been flown into the country and had already been flown out. There was rumours, there was spin, and also there was the general, I suppose, conversations in regards to, oh my God, what is going to happen next? I mean, all anyone knew for sure was something was going to happen. David Byrne was a very, very senior lieutenant. He was also from criminal royalty from the Byrne family. His brother-in-law is Thomas Bomber Kavanagh. His brother is Liam Byrne, and he's very much at the heart of the Kinahan cartel. We knew from the beginning that this attack had occurred as part of the rivalry between the Kinahan and Hutch factions of what was once the one organisation. And I think everybody was really trying to predict what this might lead to, but nobody could have guessed.
Nobody could have guessed. And of course, those rumours straight away went around. It was straight away focused on the Hutch gang. But at this time, if you remember, while there had been other incidents, for example, an attempted hit on Jerry Hutch in Lanzarote, those incidents weren't always public. People were straight away thinking this isn't the type of normal organised crime operation. They were looking at the weapons, saying, is there a paramilitary organisation involved here? Nobody knew fully. And of course, people what people did fear straight away was, no matter what, people knew how big and how powerful the Kinahans had become, and the likelihood of them not striking back was inevitable. That blood was going to flow.
That bit absolutely 100%. But at that very early stage, I recall contacts of mine suggesting that the Hutches were an army. Did they have the backing of the dissidents? Was this going to, were they going to be very heavily armed? Because of that, they had contacts in the north. It was like as if people were trying to size up how two premiership teams were going to play against one another. That's what it felt like. You've been listening to an extract from the Regency, 10 years on from the hit that changed gangland forever. Visit crimeworld.com and subscribe to hear the full series now. And you'll also get exclusive access to our other podcast deep dives on the Dapper Don, Christy Kinahan, Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, and more.